And now.
Mike, you're now live.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Extraordinary Council meeting of Norfolk Island Regional Council, being held on the 24th of May 2022. There is a single purpose for this meeting, and that is to adopt the draft delivery plan and operational plan for the next period. And I will start the meeting by asking the General Manager to recite the statement of respect, please. I ask everyone to stand.
The Norfolk Island Regional Council promotes a climate of respect for all. We will endeavour to inspire in our community shared civic pride by valuing and protecting our unique culture and environment, both natural and built, for the current and future generations. We, the Administrator and staff of the Norfolk Island Regional Council, undertake to act with honesty and integrity, to conduct ourselves in a way that engenders trust and confidence in the decisions we make and the actions we take on behalf of the Norfolk Island community. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of this island.
Thank you. Mr. General Manager, are there any apologies?
Nil.
Are there any disclosures of interest?
No, there is not.
Thank you. Then we'll move to item 5.1, which is the report from the General Manager on the draft delivery program 2022 to 2026 and the draft 2022-2023 operational plan and budget. Mr. General Manager, I'm going to ask you to present the reports that are on the Council's agenda today. I understand that there is some misunderstanding that Council is about to adopt, or being asked this afternoon to adopt, these documents, which are presented as draft documents. And I'd just like you to make clear in your address, please, that what is being proposed by way of your recommendation is to adopt drafts for the purpose of public consultation and exhibition, and not for the purpose of final adoption, which is something that will happen in early July. So that there will be a period of a month where people will have the opportunity to make submissions, both in writing and orally to me through the public access arrangements in relation to these documents. So I just want that to be clear right from the outset. And I'll ask you, when you're addressing Council, please to go into some detail in explaining the availability of the documents and how Council is proposing to present them to the public for that public exhibition period, please. So over to you, Mr.
Thanks, Mr. Administrator. Will do. Thanks, Mr. Administrator. The draft delivery plan is presented to you, which is in line with the objectives of the Community Strategic Plan of 2021 to 2026. The Norfolk Island 9-point action plan that was adopted 2020 to 2024. The external audit findings and recommendations of, conclusions of the 2021 public inquiry. I'm pleased to present to you the draft operational plan for 22-23, providing a surplus budget position of $500,000. The draft operational plan presents a significant change in the rating model previously used by Council. This report shifts from a very basic model of 4 rating categories to a more detailed model utilising subcategorisation for the first time, introducing 23 rate subcategories. This model proposes to address the conclusions of the public inquiry process in both increasing revenue and improving the equitable distribution of that revenue burden. Rating subcategorisation is used extensively across Australia, primarily to address the vast differences we see in access to services by ratepayers, but to more effectively manage revenue collection to meet the needs of the community. This is a significant shift and one that will raise questions within our community. I will try to address this change now to begin the discussion. For the 22-23 financial year, Council intends to raise $1.8 million from ordinary rates. This is an increase of $500,000 over the previous year. Council will utilise this revenue to partly fund the following expenditure for 22-23, being road maintenance and improvement, $1.4 million, workshop and depot operations of $300,000, parks maintenance and improvements for $350,000, library and radio station operations at $250,000, and tourism operation and support being $1 million. This total is $3.3 million. Now that's produces a gap between the 1.8 million that we intend to raise for rates of 1.5 million. This shortfall will be met through the financial assistance grant funding that we currently receive from the Commonwealth Government. The ordinary rate does not cover administration and governance costs of council, which equate to $5 million in this budget, which again is met in full by the financial assistance grant that is provided to council from the Commonwealth Government. For the 21-22 financial year, council implemented a waste management charge across all rate notices. Whilst this addressed a significant funding shortage, the operation remained in deficit. Council has considered the operation further this year, following considerable community consultation on a new waste management strategy and reducing our domestic and commercial waste management costs through tendering to the waste industry market. So the 22-23 operational plan now presents a new revenue collection method to fund council's operational costs for waste management. Given the significant change to the rating model and the introduction of subcategorisation, this now provides a more effective way to apply a differential waste management charge reflecting usage. Council will raise $1.8 million for waste management charges for the 22-23 financial year. This is an increase of $1 million on the previous year's charge. Council will be applying the waste management charge directly to the rate notice, the same as we did in the current financial year. Council will no longer operate a ticketing system with unlimited access to the Waste Management Centre for ratepayers and residents. These changes will provide the direction to deliver agreed outcomes of the council in line with the objective of the Community Strategic Plan, the Norfolk Island 9-point strategic plan, and external audit findings, including the conclusions of the 2021 public inquiry, resulting in the requirements to increase land rates by 38%. There is also significant increases in waste management charges. This is necessary to ensure council recovers the full cost of operating the Waste Management Centre and continues to act in an environmentally responsible manner. The business commercial operations of council have again met the requirement to operate as in surplus, with the exception of waste management, which will still operate with a $273,000 deficit, and the airport operations of $653,000 deficit. Both these amounts are attributable to more accurate depreciation figures due to the improvements that we've made in the past 12 months in the asset management systems of council. The aim is to have these commercial operations in surplus for 23-24 financial year. There will be a new service delivery agreement with the Commonwealth commencing on 1 July 22. This has been the result of some hard work between the council and department staff over the past 3 months, trying to modernise an agreement that has had little change over the past 7 years. The agreement delivers $7.4 million worth of community services and employs many locals. Finally, significant capital works are scheduled for the 22-23 operational plan as follows. There'll be the delivery of council's jet patcher for road improvement. There'll be $1.85 million spent on road infrastructure. There will be extraction of rock from the Cascade Quarry, which will yield somewhere between 11 to 13,000 tonne. $5.3 million of the of grants will be supplied for the electricity system improvements, being smart meters, a new Tesla battery and business system upgrades. There'll be 3.2 million spent on the new waste management centre infrastructure, which will be a larger glass crusher, plastics management and cardboard management. There is $1.8 million for wastewater design to lead the tender process to construct the replacement of the wastewater treatment facility. There'll be $800,000 provided for a road assessment study and the development of rehabilitation plan. And finally, another $800,000 towards sea freight port management at Cascade Port. Now, Mr. Administrator, we present this as the draft delivery program and operational plan for your consideration, which will now go on 28 days public exhibition, following your resolutions or any changes that you make. These are only draft and they're there for public comment for 28 days. At the end of that period, we will collate any submissions that are made to you and they will form a more detailed report that will go to Council for its ordinary meeting in July. At that point in time, Council also would encourage the community to use the public access system that we have developed that will allow anyone to address you directly the day before the July ordinary council meeting. Council will now also prepare and distribute a media release that will detail how to access Council's draft delivery program and operational plans online. And Council will also be preparing a short Norfolk fuss for distribution to the over 700 email accounts that we have already in play for distribution of council information. That will be done towards the end of the week, which will have more detail and ready access for those that will receive that Norfolk fuss update. Happy to take any questions, Mr. Administrator.
Thank you. I'm already hearing of some interest in relation to the 23 differential rating categories. I just wonder, broadly, they're under the headings of residential, farmland and business, and then broken down into quite a number of subcategories. Just wondering if you could just give a broad description of the differences between each of the subcategories, please.
Mr. Administrator, we have moved from having only one rating category under residence farmland in the past to splitting that into small, medium and large, and that's to be identified primarily through size of property for each of those areas. And that's to recognise that a small town block in the middle of Burnt Pine, which will be sitting on 350 square metres, is different to a property that's probably sitting on about somewhere between 1,000 to 5,000 square metres. So what we're trying to do is show a differential between what a small property is as compared to a medium property, and then above a certain figure, again, a larger property. And that's very similar to what we're trying to do with farmland. The subcategorisation that receives the majority of the change is the business category. And we're now presenting quite a detailed breakdown within the category of business and producing subcategories that identify differences between accommodation, and we've now got accommodation A, B, C and D, and they're identifying the size of the accommodation providers and trying to show the differences between those businesses there. Similarly, for shops and retail, we're splitting into two groups, but we've also identified businesses under building supplies, cafe and restaurants, splitting them into an A and B category. Service stations, car rentals, clubs and bars will be in two categories, and also supermarkets, where there'll be a small and a large facility. And if any of the businesses are not covered by those new subcategories, we've kept business other for one that can't be easily defined. So you can see that there's a significant change and trying to show equity between large and small, basically in all of those subcategorisations.
So zeroing in, for example, on the business rate and the various subcategories listed on page 9 of the business paper, am I correct then in understanding that the rate in the dollar that will be charged on the land value of the property will vary? It'll be a different rate in the dollar for accommodation A versus accommodation B or C or D, and so on, with shops, cafes, car rentals, clubs, small or large supermarkets, that you have struck or you're proposing to strike a rate in the dollar that reflects more than just the land value, but also the nature and scale of the businesses that are located on those parcels of land. Can you just clarify?
Yeah, yes, we are. Yes, we are, Mr. Administrator. That's exactly what we're trying to achieve. And distribution, the rating system in subcategorisation allows you to have more equitable distribution or differentiation between those properties that would have a different use.
Right. So theoretically, on that basis, a larger business with a higher level of economic activity would be paying a higher rate in the dollar for its category than a small business with a low level of economic activity.
Yeah, it's trying to recognise, the higher turnover of entrance and access and egress from properties, access to roads, footpaths, and council services that are provided, and it's trying to identify that through this subcategorisation.
Okay, and can you explain to me, please, it seems to me that the amount that we're proposing to raise from the general rates is roughly equivalent to the amount that we're proposing to raise from the waste management charge. One of those is totals up 1.821 million, the other totals 1.8 million. Is that a coincidence, or is there a particular reason why we're endeavouring to raise virtually the same amounts from each of, or from the rate and then separately from the charge?
Yeah, so the waste management charge is the actual cost of delivery, less the depreciation figure, which is waste management will continue to be in deficit of 237,000, which is equivalent to the depreciation that we've identified against that this year. But the actual running costs are 1.8 million. I suppose it's coincidental that it's the same as what was struck for the general rates. The general rates was 1.3 last year, and we intend to increase to 1.8 through this recategorisation or using the subcategories. It allows us to come to this new figure that we're proposing of 1.8. So they're both very different how we've arrived at them. One's an actual cost of what it will be to deliver that service, and the second one is through the using subcategorisation has taken us to this figure of 1.8.
Thank you. And correct me if I'm wrong about this, but it seems to me that the rationale behind the increase, particularly in the general rates, but also in the business charges, including the waste management charge, the rationale behind that, or those increases, is heavily influenced by the conclusions that came out of the public inquiry, to the effect that although council had revenue raising mechanisms available to it, it failed to take advantage of those revenue raising mechanisms, and that what you are proposing in these draft documents is to go back and do what the public inquiry is suggesting that the previous council failed to do. Can you just explain to me the position on that, please?
Yeah, so the public inquiry was focused heavily on the facts that council didn't increase its revenue earning capabilities through its rate levy during the first 5 years of its operation. I suppose it was hard at that time, given that there was no guidance, there was no ability to rely on a CPI or an RPI or anything along those lines. But I suppose with the presentation of the RPI to you last month that was developed, and it showed that it was close to 20% increase in that same 5-year period, it shows that it was a guide of some proportion that should have been used to increase rates during those 5 years. So whilst we're saying to you that we're requesting a 38% increase this year, that is primarily due to the compounding effect of not increasing the rates to the right levels that should have occurred in year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5. And so when that happens, and it's happened in many other council areas that I worked at, where councils don't increase the rates by its full amount, it then has to play a slight amount of catch up at a period of year 5 or say year 10 or whenever they do catch up. That increase is slightly bigger than what, say, if they just stuck to a CPI RPI index in previous years. So that's a bit of a guide, but it's the public inquiry conclusions that said it wasn't done and it should have been done, and that's why we're trying to play catch up at this point in time with this operational plan that's presented to you in draft.
Thank you. And it seems to me that the original total rate revenue in the first year of council at $500,000 was establishing a very low base. So you know, that raises questions about the level of rates right from the outset, whether they were adequate to fund council's activities. And I understand that in the first year, council was required to raise $500,000 in rates, and then that figure was substantially increased in the second year. And so it seems to me that the original base was very, very low to start with, and is another contributing factor of why it is necessary to have a significant percentage rate increase to catch up, because our starting point was off a very, very small base. Can you comment on that, please?
Yeah, look, Mr. Administrator, if you go to page 7 of the report, and it's what we're trying to highlight in that paragraph in the middle of the page, showing that we're requesting that we raise 1.8 million from ordinary rates, but that still falls 1.5 million short of basic services we're trying to provide on the island, which is roads, parks, library, tourism. You know, they're the things that are the backbone of this community and makes it, you know, the parks and the roads and all those things are the things that we can enjoy living in this community, and the rates don't even cover that. So that's, you know, that's where we're starting from. We're coming from a long way back, and in most other communities, those things are covered by your ordinary rate. And so we're quite heavily reliant, as are, you know, some Western Queensland and New South Wales councils, on the financial assistance grant, because without that, we wouldn't cover our administration and governance costs, all these 1.5 million of these services. So if you don't raise revenue to cover the services you provide, the next question is, we stop doing things. We pull up roads, we stop mowing parks, we stop doing these things. So that's what we're trying to show in this report.
And if we stop doing those things, then that would itself have flow-on effects into local employment.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we're walking a very delicate tightrope between the community's understandable desire to keep rating levels as low as we possibly can. We're trying to balance that against the community's desire to have infrastructure and services that are necessary to keep the island receiving a reasonable level of service. So that seems to me to be the the balancing act that we're presented with.
Yes, absolutely. And it is a very tight balancing act.
Okay. Now, I have had some feedback about concerns about some of the content of the documents that I'm being asked to adopt in draft form for exhibition. So there, as I said at the outset of the meeting, there seems to be a misunderstanding that the purpose of today's meeting is just to adopt and implement those plans. But you have explained to me, and I will stress again, and I'll incorporate into the resolution, that no, that's not where we're at today. Today is just to put the plans on the table, to advise the public of their content. Until we reached the point that we reached at today's meeting, we didn't have anything to discuss with the community. Now we have some draft plans that we're proposing to take out to the community for discussion, for exhibition, for consultation. And as you've rightly pointed out, I'll be making myself available for face-to-face discussions with the community, particularly through the public access session that will occur in the lead up to the July council meeting, but also at other times if that's not a convenient time for people to be speaking to me, that anyone who wishes to have a conversation with me about these matters, just get in touch with Mel Plant at council and she will make an appointment for you to have a face-to-face with me. So for today's purpose, for the purpose of public exhibition, I resolve that in accordance with sections 404 and 405 of the Local Government Act 1993, New South Wales, Norfolk Island, Council adopts for public exhibition and consultation the draft 2022-2026 delivery program and the draft 2022-2023 operational plan, with the following to be placed on public exhibition, inviting submissions for a minimum of 28 days. 1, the draft 2022-2026 delivery program. 2, the draft 2022-2023 operational plan. 3, draft 2022-2023 revenue policy and statement. 4, the draft 2022-2023 operational plan and budget. And 5, the draft 2022-2023 fees and charges. And I will move now to item 6, which is on page 128 of today's agenda. Item 6 is urgent business without notice. Mr. General Manager, is there any urgent business?
I have none today.
Thank you. I'm at item 7 now. Questions for the next meeting? There are no questions. Which brings me, Mr. General Manager, is there anything else I need to attend to before I close the meeting?
Nothing further today, Mr. Administrator.
Thank you. Then I declare the meeting closed at 3:28 p.m. and I thank everyone for their attendance. Thank you.
Thank you.